G'day, folks. It is the coach here. I have an awesome guest. We've been laughing our ass off before the show went live. I am with my good friend, Chuck Moore, straight out of America. We are talking today about building a personal narrative in the Age of Sigmar, finding our place in the mortal realms, really kind of not just building an army and reading some story, but, really owning that little space of ours and bringing it to life on the tabletop. And Chuck Moore is my guest. We are going to talk all about finding our place. And I guess for ourselves, where did we kind of find our place? How do we kind of build out our place? And, give you some tips and tricks along the way to understand, what you can start to do to get to there. So, Chuck, you are not just a narrative gamer, you are a competitive gamer, you're a tournament organizer, you are a man of Marathi, but more importantly, not just Marathi, Rathi.
Yes.
How are you, mate?
I am doing good. It's great to be streaming all the way across both ends of the world right now. I got my quarantine beard on. So no, things are going good. I'm excited to sit here, chat, and talk some narrative, and help people learn how to develop their own, find their little piece of and plot of land in the mortal realms and call it their own, and start building from it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this because I think for myself, when I first came in from Warhammer Fantasy Battles to the Age of Sigmar, I really struggled with this. This was something to me that was a really tough time, and one of the reasons that I actually left Age of Sigmar when I very first started. I played the game. I didn't really enjoy it, not because of the mechanics, but I just couldn't find my place. I was an Empire man. I was very blessed for that 4 or 5 battle tomes with maps, detailed maps and history and pinpoints. And I could have my elect accounts, and I had my different, emperors. And I knew that on this side of the world, I had Bretonnia and the Wood Elves. And up this side, I had Kislev and Chaos. And I knew everything. And then when Age of Sigmar kind of came out, I lost that spot. And for a lot of people here who are exploring the mortal realms, the most enjoyment I've had over the last, say, 12 to 18 months has finding that place, exploring it, and kit bashing the living hell. I have done more conversions, more kit bashing, more exploring of the mortal realms in the last 12 to 18 months than I ever did in Warhammer Fantasy Battles. And this is why I'm excited to talk to you. I don't know how your journey started, but I would love to know how you got into Warhammer and Age of Sigmar.
Warhammer in general, I started with my local club. I originally started with the 40K end of it, fell in love with that lore, and then went into the local game store and saw that there was elves, and I was always more of a fantasy-driven person. So I immediately picked up a box of high elves and painted them and started playing with my local club. And I won't go into all the nitty-gritty of it, but I was a true and blue high elf player all the way up through the end times. I mean, I did dabble in dark elves and wood elves, and even the old dwarves for a little bit. But it's interesting looking back on the time now, because I did have parts of that world I attached to. So I was a high elf player from Illyria because I love the horses. I've always loved horses as an animal, so really attached to them. Painted in that color scheme. But even whenever I made my own character, because in the old Big Red Book, BRB, there was a very key point that said, the general on the tabletop is you, so make it you. So I made a high elf on a horse, I made a high elf general on a horse, gave him a lance, gave him a nice dragon armor, and like this was my character, this was me, and my old Twitter handle, Odium. It's kind of the name I use in all my role playing games, and anytime you see an MMO, if you see that name, that is me. But even though I had a character and a home, it was a home created by somebody else. And my character was always going to be second fiddle to so many other characters. So, you had Tyrion, you had Teclis, you had Ilariel. And then even below that, you had the secondary characters like Corhill or Caradrian, who were second fiddle to those top level. So I was below that in essence. So I really didn't find a place as a narrative gamer until Age of Sigmar. And it did take some time, because I understand whenever you came over, we didn't really have much definition of what the realms were. We knew that it was based upon magic, but
it was very high concept, right? There was just god beasts and, Sigmar and Grungy and all these, the Parthion and, had these concepts of the mortal realms. And I remember and I'm sure we'll talk more about it. The penny really dropped for me when I saw, I think it was Phil Kelly's video where he explained the mortal realms and how they interacted with each other. And this 5-minute video, and it kind of like, that was the moment where the penny dropped and it clicked. And I'm like, now I get it. I don't have the maps yet. And, there were things like Firestorm and Cities of Sigmar and other initiatives that kind of build out the world. But you're right. Like when I started playing Warhammer Fantasy Battles, my army was in Altdorf, which is the capital city. Had the Emperor. What drew me was the College of Magic. And I know people might have heard me talk about the fact that I love Halo Heart. And I've always been like a Halo Heart player. And that's because I've always loved the magic. I've always loved, the College of Magic and all of that stuff that kind of came with it. And that was what drew me to Altdorf. And they had the Imperial Zoo, which allowed me to have, Pegasus and dragons and manticores. And, basically the Emperor had one of every animal.
Yep.
But I also created that little character. There was a little, his name, Rutgar or Rutgoff. He was a little like campaign character. And I'd kind of shaved off his mustache to make him like clean skin. I kind of converted his arm, and that was me. And I always had like a little battle mage that would be like my little 2IC. Her name was Cassandra with the R spelt backwards because I love corn, and that's how corn spells. but it's like a little Egyptian, but also like that was about me. But I don't think like I always kind of kept to the book. I kept to the script. I painted the army like I saw in the army book. I built them the way they were on the box, and I never went outside of my lane, essentially.
Yeah, and even whenever Age of Sigmar started, I played Stormcast because everything was kind of up in the air. Like, what are the armies? How do we play them? But I had the starter box, and I wasn't not a Chaos player at all. But even my Stormcast, I have them painted in Reichsguard colors because I was like, oh, humans. Right? I always liked the Reichsguard. I guess I'll do my Empire army now because we didn't know what was going on. But yeah, for me, it really started kicking off during the Seasons of War. Whenever we had that summer campaign, people were in my area were finally into the game after me endlessly pushing to try and get people going, and it was taking off, and it really gave everybody a place to rally behind because we were all looking like, who's going to take these cities, and thank in order took them all in the end, but it really helped the clubs around the area gel, but it also said, okay, I can be from here. This place exists. It's a city I know about, which they were the first ones that were outside of Azerheim, which was Sigmar, and we didn't even know if we could get there or not. It just Stormcast coming down, and they didn't know how to get back unless they died. So that's when it's really started kicking off for me. Firestorm, that was great too. But
Firestorm was off the back of the Season of War. So for anyone who's joined us in Age of Sigmar, maybe over the last 2 to 3 years, we had these novels called the Realmgate Wars, which was all about Sigmar and the Pantheon trying to reclaim their parts of the mortal realm, beat off chaos. The way they did that was by claiming the realm gates and reclaiming the realm gates. Then we had like this global campaign where we as players contributed to a total score, and there were 3 different regions. I think it was like the Europes, the Americas, and like the Asia Pacific. And we were all fighting for 3 different realm gates, and based off the successes of those fights, because Order was able to win the fights in the end, that's why we got the Firestorm campaign, which was allowing us to have lots of different rules, basically the Cities of Sigmar. And then because of that, that's how we've got the Cities of Sigmar. That's why we've got the armies in Gairan and Akshi, and we don't know yet about the other realms. It's not that, GW are being jerks. It's just that this is a story that's been told over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and we keep seeing little pieces added in the narrative. So we had the Lethesian in the malign sorcery, malign portents, malign sorcery,
forbidden power.
Forbidden power. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so like it's just here's a 1 page, and it gives you how to play this army that then is in this narrative about what's happening, and it's fun and it's exciting, and it's viable. You can play it on the field and do well in your games. So there's always more and more, and I love it because the more places we have to call home, like we get those nice maps. Like we had a great Soulbound just came out, and if you pre-ordered it and got the PDF copy, you also got the Great Parch map, which has a lot of detail in it. Find that map and be like, I live here. This is where my army is going to live if you want to be from Action.
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk about things like Soulbound, because I did buy it. I'm on the fence on whether I'll actually play it or not. You know, I am a true Dungeons and Dragons player at heart, and I love Dungeons and Dragons. I wouldn't mind playing Soulbound, but the reason I bought it was because of all that beautiful detail about Akshi and about the mortal realms that they were able to tell, and that's just kind of expanded my knowledge and given me a better idea of where my place is in the mortal realms. And I think that's what today's going to be about. I would like is to go, you know, what was your story? Because Chuck, you have an amazing story for your army. It's so inspirational, and you know, people might sit there and go, how on earth did this crazy guy get to this point? I'd love to then break that down to go, well, you know, what were the steps and how do I start reclaiming my place in the mortal realms? What did Anthony and Chuck do to do that? And then how do you bring that to life? And what are the tools that are available to us to bring that to life? And, you know, g'day to everyone in the chat. I can see Luke, Ken, Tobias. We've got Sean. We've got Aussie Wargamer, Safeguard, Mitch.
Hey, everybody.
You know, we've got so many cool people here, by the way. Thanks for hanging out. Yeah. And if you've got any questions as well, feel free to pop them in the chat and I'll bring it up if at a relevant point. So
and make sure you smash that like button now, guys. Just smash it right now. Hit it hard.
Smash it. No, I'm very blessed and very fortunate. You guys are all legends. So you got into Age of Sigmar, and let's set the landscape. You know, Phil Kelly. There's a lot of storytelling. You know, the old world had died. We had the end times. By the way, if you're watching this live, Games Workshop is just putting out the end times books digitally at the moment, so you can go back and find out how the old world died. You know, what the story was with Nagash and Archeon, and
it's a great story.
The Glocken, and there's just so much that happened. And then we kind of how we got to the Age of Sigmar, and we've kind of reclaimed parts of the realm. We're exploring things. I had a chat with 2+ Tough Dog recently. We were kind of going, like, how do you explore it, right? We had Forbidden Power, Malign Sorcery. We've had the Necro Quake. We've had the Soul Wars. We've had the Realm Gate Wars. We've had obviously the Cities of Sigmar with maps, and we've had Slanesh and the elves, kind of how they've kind of handled things, and Nagash kind of getting all uppity of his losing his souls, and chaos fighting each other. And there's just so much, which is really exciting. But it's then like, right, well, I'm going to collect X army. Cities of Sigmar, Gloomspite Gits, Slanesh, whatever my army is. How do you then kind of be more than just a kind of like a standardized army, and you've got a Daughters of Cain army, and it might be a nice segue if I bring up some of the things that you've given me. And I got to see this in real life last year at Adepticon, and you have a Daughters of Cain army, but it's not just a generic standard Daughters of Cain. Right. And I couldn't think of a better picture, and you don't even know what order these are coming in. You just sent me a bunch of stuff.
I don't.
So I thought I'd kind of like this might be like laying the land. Like, what on earth is this, and how did you get into Daughters of Cain, and how did you make it your own?
So the origin of Daughters of Cain. So my army is its own. I play the Craith as far as the official temples go. That's the rule set I use because I just have the most fun with it. But I have a army called the Teyrathian Cult. And because whenever I do my army narratives, I like to centralize it around a single hero. Now, that's not the only way you can do it. You can do a true theme of an army. You can do a true, like we were just talking the Reichsguard. Like, that is a theme in of itself. You could have a city that is a theme without having any really strong characters. We have characters, whereas I like to have a really strong character that's leading and guiding and pulling everything. Very Daughters of Cain like. So it began at Adepticon. Was it 2 years ago? Officially, whenever the Daughters of Cain were released, I was.
It was 2018.
Yeah, so I was originally going to do actually a Darkling Coven's army, and then my good friend Domus reached out. He's like, "Hey, I got some to sell to you. By the way, I have a bunch of these old metal witch elves that he sold me for next to nothing." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll take them. Why not? I like the look of those old sculpts." And the more I looked into it and talking to people online, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do Daughters of Cain. And then all of a sudden the reveals started coming out and the book dropped. And it was just like, oh, okay, I lucked my way into this and I'm loving it. I love every moment of it. So went full in Daughters of Cain from that moment. And even at that time, it was like, this was going to be my army for the year, perhaps. So, and as everyone knows me, I do like all kinds of music, but pop music's my favorite. My favorite pop artist is Taylor Swift. So that's where Teyrathi comes from. So originally the army was called the Taylothian cult, and I didn't have Teyrathi built because she had founded the cult and had disappeared or died. It was unknown. And then I took it to Adepticon, played it, had fun. So, I can't stop enjoying this army. I just keep loving it. And then I decided to go to an event in England, Realms at War. So shout out to Steve, Mitzi, Jimbo, and Ming over there. Run an amazing event. There's only, when you think narrative events, there's only two that come to mind, and it's the Holy Havoc, Holy Wars, and Realms at War. And by God, go to both. But regardless, I was going over there, and they have a very core theme about creating something that's a theme for the entire event. And we had to create an Aethermist. And I was like, well, why don't I make this Teyrathi character? Let me actually, and I fiddled with bits, put a lot of effort into it. And it's like, okay, now I need a story of how she came back. So I worked through it. And if you, shameless plug, my blog, strengthhammer.net, if you click on the lore section, you can see all the lore of how this all developed if you want much more detail as far as from the character's perspective. But through a accident in Aether Me, which was the theme of the event, she was reborn from this character that I had, and it really just kept going from there because, like you said, I'm a narrative person, but I'm also a competitive person, so I just keep taking this army to events, and I saw no reason to separate the two, so I would have a narrative no matter what the event was.
So it's not like you sat there and got your Daughters of Cain battle tome and fleshed out this amazing narrative in a single day. This is something that's kind of evolved over time as events have happened, as you've had interactions on the table. So I guess the first lesson here, folks, is that by finding your narrative, it's not this one single moment of truth. It is this constant evolution of your gaming history. And it's about the way you interact with players. It's the way that you look at your army. It is evolving always over time.
Yeah, and that's a absolutely brilliant breakdown. I couldn't have said it better myself, even if I tried, and I probably would have had typos if I did. But you're right. So like the core of my idea when I took this to Adepticon was just to play on the fact that I like Taylor Swift. That was it. That was the kernel of the idea. And then by then embracing the narrative and working towards a narrative event specifically, it really began developing as a character of herself. And then that character started shaping the army. And it eventually became a life of its own. And in this picture that you see right here, so a Stone Monk Gamer on Twitter, fantastic artist. I went to him and said, "Hey, would you draw my Teyrathi character?" At the time, I had a model of her, but I said, "Just take Taylor Swift, combine it with Morathi." And this is actually the second one he did for me, where he surprised me because first one he knocked it out of the park. I mean, knocked it out of the park with both of them, but he sent me this, and he didn't tell me that he was putting me into the art.
And bonus points if you notice that there's Chuck as well along the snake belly.
Yeah,
it's just so much brilliance with this, and I know you've kind of shared a few other pictures. I hope I'm not kind of going too fast, but like for me, just the visual element, and for some people you may think this is kind of down the path, but I love that you've really encaptured this persona. But again, it's kind of built over time, and I've got two other pieces of art here. If you want to kind of explain a little bit more about this.
Right. So the one, I guess it's on the left, where it's the traditional Morathi above Taylor Swift's head. That is the first one Eric did for me. And if you notice, there is the Chuck in the heart. Like I said, I loved it. This was a great thing to have because anytime I print an army list going to an event, that's the cover page. You get a cover page followed by a narrative, followed by my actual list. That's how I approach every single event, whether it's narrative or competitive or just even like a friendly little one dare. That's what you're going to get from me. And if you look at the one on the right, is a much more recent one. My wife did that. She's a very more, I guess we'll call it anime style. I'm sure there's a term for it that I'm not getting right. But at this point, having made 5 or 6 different versions of the Teyrathi model, I said, okay, it's time to actually have art piece that reflects the model of Terathi, because even though it started out as this fun little, like I said, play on the fact that I like Taylor Swift and all that, it's like, no, Terathi is just, she's a being now. Like, I'm shocked at how many people recognize the name and her, and it's grown into this great thing, and people love it. So I wanted to have that represented in an art piece too. So whenever I do covers or art or promotions, that's the other quick little side thing. The other secret to help getting a narrative out there and pushing it is just never shut up about it. if you know me, I don't shut up about it because I love it.
Well, it's a bit hard to not notice it when you dress up like Terathi at Raw. And I think that was when kind of the world noticed that. True story, by the way. If you look down in the video description, I will have Chuck's Twitter handle. And if you go deep enough, about 2 years worth of photos, you will find him dressed up as Terathi. And it was absolutely glorious. Now, does this for any second of time mean that we expect you to go out and cosplay your character? No. If you want to, the space is there.
Yeah, no one's gonna bat an eye at you if you want to do it, and it's if your parents be like, that's really cool. I guess this thing like Realms at War had a costume award, and when I was looking at going over there, I said, okay, I want to go for an award. Looking at all the people that are over there, amazing people who still are narrative players that I look up to, amazing artists, just top level, and knowing that I was traveling, I looked around and I saw the best costume, and I had the idea to dress up as Morathi. So that's why I did it, because I'm like, I can win this award. I can go this far.
And, funnily enough, I remember I attended an event, Sydney Slaughter 2018. So it was probably around, probably not far off a very similar time to your Raw character. But I was going in for my first representation of Legion of Nagash, specifically Legion of Night. I was running mad for it, and I did walk away with best death at that tournament. Nice. But one of the things that I did is I dressed up like a necromancer. I had this old
you did the videos. I remember the videos. Yeah,
I did some videos, and it was really funny because it was really stupid. It was a lot of fun, but I think there is where I want to kind of come back to is that there are a lot of different ways that you can bring this to life. And we've kind of heard a little bit about this Terathi. We've heard a bit about Daughters of Cain and kind of making it your own. And once you've found a little place in the mortal realms, it allows you to then go, right, well, how do I bring this onto the table? Chuck and I were just talking before we went live. I decided, Liam and I, so Shadowhammer and I, were talking literally last night, and he's really been enjoying the Scourge runner chariots in Tabletop Simulator. So he's a Daughters of Cain player as well. And he's like, I want these chariots, but I want them to be daughters. I want them to be my army. And he was showing me the ways he was going to do it using Medusas. He was going to take parts from the cauldron. He was going to get it running with a Charybdis as opposed to like horses or some type of mount. And I really enjoy the chariots as well. And I'm like, how do I make this my own? Because I'm a free guild player. I play with humans. People might have seen my pictures where I've, turned my Phoenix Guard into humans. I'm currently, working on my Dreadlord on Black Dragon, which is using the Carmine Dragon. So I'm trying to making a human I wouldn't say proxy, because it's not just, I'm not taking a standard model and just going, well, this now represents this. I'm putting in effort and work to make it more reflective of my army.
You're creating a characterful army, and the war scrolls are just going to go on after, which is a really interesting way to look at it. The war scrolls don't matter to you as much as creating what you want and then finding the war scroll that fits it.
And for anyone who, by the way, wants to see all this stuff, do check the channel description. You will see Strengthhammer's Twitter handle. I can't remember if I put the blog on there, but I will put the blog. It's
in my Twitter profile, so don't worry.
Worst case scenario, go to the Twitter handle. You'll go see his blog. You'll see all the great pictures as well. And we're going to show off in a minute some of the pictures of his army. But I guess I wanted to kind of bring it back and go, right, you didn't have to start off by building these great art pictures. You don't have to go to your wife and ask your wife or Stone Mug Gamer to do an art piece. It could just be simply finding a place in the story. And I've really enjoyed Akshi. The two armies that I've built are so leading into CanCon, which was the world's largest event, happened this year. I decided that I was going to choose my place in the Mortal Realms because I was going to go hard on a display board. I wanted to do my best. I went hard because I run a tournament, a 100-person tournament that happens around the same time as Armies on Parade. So while everyone's preparing for Armies on Parade, I miss out because I'm painting terrain. I'm doing players pack stuff. I'm talking to sponsors. So I went, that's it, screw it. I'm going to go hard at CanCon. I want to place in the Mortal Realms. And at the time, I said, right, the place that I'm most reflective of is I love Hallowheart and I love Tempest Eye. They're both from Akshi. And I looked at the map and I'm like, right, well, there's this little island called the Opal Isles. And during the Firestorm campaign, which is like this little kind of narrative campaign before Cities of Sigmar, we were fighting over this area called the Flame Scar Peninsula. Mm-hmm. And basically Hallowheart and Tempest Eye and the Flame Scar Peninsula, and then there's this little island between the two called the Opal Isles that wasn't really explored in detail, but it was enough for me to go, right, this is my army, this is where it's from. I'm going to try to build a narrative relationship on what this army does with Hallowheart, but also what does it do for Tempest Eye. So it could be the research center, and they kind of trade artifacts and help kind of protect the Flame Scar before people go in, or like whatever that story might be. But I kind of right, I'm going to choose something.
For me, whenever I developed the army and the army took a character of its own, I was really just kind of generally set in Gairan. I just mostly because I had attachment to the Realm of Life, because that was the easiest place for my mind to grasp way back when everything began. I actually just recently, so I guess we call ourselves neighbors. I recently, the last piece of lore I did was called the Terathian Exodus, where Ilariel finally sick of her shenanigans and sacrifices, kicks her out. So she takes her whole cult and leaves and goes through Hallowheart, which was a long ordeal process, which I might explore in more detail for some fun. Because imagine moving an entire fanatical Daughters of Cain cult of thousands and thousands of Cainite worshipping elves through a city peacefully. That's going to be pretty hard. But I kind of glossed over that for the time being and settled her actually outside Anvilgard, up by the mountains up there. I forget what the mountains are called, but yeah, just to the east. And the lore piece I did was her finalizing the settlement terms. And I did Anvilgard specifically because it being the more Darkling Covens style location, it was an easy place, I think, for the Cainite stuff to kind of fit in and not feel too brute forced. So you can find a place in the realms, like an actual true place at any time. So don't feel like you have to do that and then do that and then develop your narrative. You can develop your narrative and then find that place. So both ways will work depending on how you want to do it.
And that kind of ties in kind of nicely to this particular picture where, so I guess another kind of piece that I'm trying to draw out here is that this is, again, this story that has evolved over time. And while I did mention my CanCon journey, one of the critical moments for me as well was that CanCon was set in the realm of Gairan, mm-hmm. And specifically the event was called the Jade Kingdoms, and Clint had done this amazing job, the tournament organizer, Australia's grandfather of Age of Sigmar, put together about, let's say, 3 paragraphs about the Jade Kingdoms, and he explained why, or a little bit about the campaign. Not too much, but just enough to kind of get your narrative lips kind of wet if you're into that. And I kind of took that as a personal challenge to say, well, why is my army fighting in CanCon? What is it doing, and why is it there? And when I looked at my army, I had it was being led by an anointed, so anointed on foot. I had my wizard contingents. I had my Hurricanum. I had a bunch of battle mages. I had my Phoenix Guard. I had a bunch of endless spells. I had some handgunners, and I'm like, right, well, my army's based in Akshi, and I thought to myself, I'm going to be a research center. I'm going to be basically tasked by Hallowheart to go into the Jade Kingdoms and find stuff that they can try to get a better understanding of Gairan. we don't know what we're going to encounter, right? Because we haven't gone to CanCon yet. So we don't know who we're going to encounter. We're not going to know what we're going to find. But basically, we're tasked to go find stuff, then report it back. And, whether I won, whether I lost, depending on who I fought, then that might get me thinking, well, first off, I encountered Kharadron and Overlords in round 4. My first army I fought was, the Beast Claw Raiders. So, sorry, it was a Beast Claw Raider-esque, but it was obviously the Ogre tribes. Like, how does that come into play? Are they trying to deny me from my artifacts? Do they hold the artifacts? What's the deal? And it kind of ties me to what you've shared, and which is the progression of your army, and it's kind of how this has all kind of come into play. And this, for me, is super inspirational because I can start to see and how you've documented the narrative over time.
Yeah, and like I said, the one thing too, whenever you're developing this and you actually start grabbing more and more ideas, don't be afraid to play along with the core narratives that's happening within your army or even the Mortal Realms. Like if you see Age of the Telothian Cult, that's DepthCon 2018. You can see I'm a sect of the Craith. Now, eventually, I tried other temples here and there just to try out the entire book, but it's you can play along with it and play a powerful army and still be in line with your own personal narrative and the army's narrative. You just have to know the characters in the book to know the army. For instance, you'd think, being a Daughters of Cain player, that my army would be always worshipping Morathi and doing whatever she says. No, exact opposite. I have a Morathi model because it's a beautiful model, and I have run her in games with Terathi. Terathi is essentially opposed to Morathi. She knows that Morathi's lying, that she's absorbing the power through Cain's heart, and she wants to gain power herself by collecting the different shards of Cain that have been scattered across the realms, and then eventually taking on Morathi, taking the heart so she can rebirth Cain. That's always been her goal. Now you might be thinking okay, well, why would Morathi let her live? Well, if you know Morathi's history, of course she'd let her live. Morathi's secretly pulling the strings over Terathi anyway. So I'm able to find a way to narratively be opposed to the core leader of my entire faction, but not be in any sort of danger because I'm technically being used. Because I'm never going to have my personal character outshine the true core character of the army, as in Morathi, because the Games Workshop controls her. I don't control Morathi, but I control Terathi.
You're not trying to override the stories. You're not trying to say that this is my Lord of Death and he is more powerful than Nagash. You're not trying to say that, you're not trying to override the fundamental core of the Mortal Realms. But I love how you've weaved in your character to find a spot in the Mortal Realms through a relationship. And you talked about the story that you had around Alariel and, having to migrate through Gairan into Akshi and, Anvilgard and Hallowheart. So you're interacting with the other characters, but not necessarily trying to be in the Pantheon or try to remove everything that's happening in the Mortal Realms and almost like making your own version. So I love that you're weaving through and those interactions are continuing your story.
Yeah, and like I said, if you look through this timeline as you scroll through it, you'll notice that there's a lot of events on here, and they're all mostly competitive. There's a few narrative events specifically, but heck, if you even look right now in the middle of the screen, you'll see ETC, ETC 2019. You think how? First of all, I wasn't a member of the team for ETC 2019 or at all, but I know Bill and Roger and the team, so I helped them with some practice for a night when they got a practice together. But Roger, my friend, he was playing Daughters of Cain. He's like, "Hey Chuck, I need 2 Hag Queens." And he's like, "I know you have the bits. Can you help me out?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. What's your color scheme?" And he said, "Oh, I'm doing red, white, and blue." Okay, so I kit bashed them together pretty easily. And as I was doing it, I'm like, I have an idea. On the back of one was more of a traditional Hag Queen, one was a Blood Bowl model. But on the back side, on their garments, I put Terathi's rune, which if you look on this image, it's on the far bottom left. I just free-handed it on, and yeah, it looks like a TS because Taylor Swift. Because I then wrote a narrative of Terathi giving her blessing for these two Hag Queens to depart for the essentially like the greater good. Like you were going off to fight this battle that's bigger than just my cult. I give you permission. Cain's blessing go with you. And I released that when they were over there. And I made sure to tell everybody, like, please tell Roger how great his army narrative is while you're at the most competitive event in the world. Which it just goes hand in hand. Like, there's no reason why you can't be competitive and narrative at the same time. Like, I'd love to wash it away instantly.
And that's probably another really good point to drive home. And so first off, I'll acknowledge something that Aussie Wargamers mentioned in the chat, which is, absolutely perfect. And he's talked about, developing a narrative is starting with an overarching idea or a theme, and then you fleshing it out as you're building the army. So, so I mentioned that I was going for a hobby award at CanCon and my display board, and, Aussie Wargamer and I, and there was a couple of others that were kind of in the top three. Aussie got me in second place, so he's awesome. But his was a very, mixed destruction, but a very pirate themed. And again, I know that he wouldn't have started with this. I've got this idea with a Gargan and these orcs. I'm going to put it in a treasure chest. Like, it's just kind of like, you keep pushing yourself as you go. When you start with a little idea and you explore it more and go, well, I don't like that. I don't like that. And then kind of like I mentioned just before we kind of show this kind of this timeline, is that I mentioned that Liam Shadowhammer is looking at building his own chariots. And I said, well, how do I make my own free guild chariots? And I recently read in the Soulbound RPG book, they've talked about this army in the Flamescar Peninsula. And essentially it's a city of warrior women. And the way that they get appointed to be warrior women is that they have to slay or tame a Flamescar lion. That got me thinking, like, I really like that. I don't want a chariot with horses. I was struggling and looking at the existing kits. I don't like the traditional scourge runners. And then that kind of thing, I kind of added one and one. I went, what about the high off lion chariot? So I started looking and I went, and like, well, it's no longer the high off lion chariot. It's now the Flamescar lions. And how did my city, being an Akshi city, being not far from the Flamescar Peninsula, how did they get those chariots? And it complements my army so well, even though the War Scroll says it's essentially a Darkling Coven unit. It is a horse, not a lion. But that simple idea has now gotten me down a path that I'm chasing high elf lion chariots. And I love it. I love it. It's so fucking cool.
Yep. That's the fun part. Like, as things build and build, like I said, even me, if you look at somewhere in this timeline, I have had moments where I'm like, okay, let me try something different, because Terathi is the leader of this entire army. She's not going to be doing everything out there. She's going to have lieutenants. So I've made some sub characters for certain events, specifically Martin Orlando last year at Nova Open had the Lore Master Challenge. It was between myself, him, Doug from 2 Plus Stuff, and Kelly. Yep. Kelfrey on Twitter. And then so it was, we all submitted lore, internet voted on it. Doug took that easily. And then we also gamed with each other, and then we scored some points. Me and Martin ended up tying on that, so we shared the award. So I let him take the plaque home. I just wanted a picture of him and me with the plaque. So that's my trophy. But I didn't want to take Terathi to this. I'm like, this is as small as 1,000 points. I didn't want to take Terathi because, one, it's, there's different levels of skill for narrative and painting. Like I said, like Kelly's a phenomenal painter, but I don't see her do much narrative. I do lots of narrative, not the best painter. Doug's very well rounded. Martin's a very good competitive and a very good painter. So Martin made this event in essence to allow us all to shine. But I was like, if I take Terathi, that's going to overload, I think, the narrative in my mind, because like she is such a powerful being. So let me make a lieutenant. So that was Terathi's gamble. She made the first male Slaughter Queen, which actually he's right here. Just some Blood Bowl bits and Daughter's Cain bits. Yeah, I'm like, what's the most interesting thing with an all-female army? It's like, okay, let's throw a dude in there. and see, let's see how that goes. I haven't explored it since then, but it's a fun little kernel of idea that I could always go back to. So feel free to like branch off these things. If they don't work, just leave them and go somewhere else.
I want to drill down on a point you just made, and that is narrative gaming and competitive gaming are not mutually exclusive.
Mhm.
I think you and I both agree that even when we go to a match play tournament, you know, you've said Warpacker, you've seen Adepticon, you know, whether it's going to Nova, I go to, you know, a whole bunch of different competitive events. You know, I've mentioned CanCon as one, but that's not the only one. It's not like I leave my narrative at home. Mm-hmm. Whether I bring it to life on my display boards, whether I bring it to life. So one of the things that I do all the time, and if anyone watched Doom and Darkness's list review show for his event in Adelaide, the SAGT, he was doing a whole bunch of list reviews, and I had names for every single one of my characters, and he made a comment like, it was more of a tongue-in-cheek comment, but every one of my characters were named. And that's one simple way that I can bring my narrative to life without forcing it into my opponent's face to say, this is where my army's from, and blah, 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 blah. Because, you know, there is that opportunity every time we play. It's like, here's my army list. And for someone who's got a narrative bone or has got a little bit of curiosity, they'll say, oh, what's the deal with X? Or, you know, where'd that name come from? And I remember at another event late last year, the Runax team tournaments, there's a gentleman in my local community called Brant, who is also a Free Guild player. But what he had done is there's a guy in the UK who will 3D print these little plaques. The nameplates, yeah, they go around the base. So that was a way that he was able to bring his characters to life. And again, if I go up against him, I'm like, oh, that character has a name. Is there a story? So you can have those narrative conversations without having to force like a big, you know, novella in front of your opponent. And they're like, come on, guys, I just want to play. But at the same time, I've also seen it in such a way, like I've seen opponents challenge me and say, well, this is what your character would do. Are you sure? And I'm like, oh, damn you.
Playing right into your hand. Oh.
Yeah. Or if I'm not winning a game, it has an opportunity for me to muck around and go, well, screw it, I'm going to throw the game. Doesn't matter. I clearly can't win at this point, so I'm just going to do something that could be narratively beneficial for me.
I've had games too where the person came to the table was very competitive focused. They didn't care about my narrative at all at that time. We played the game. They they put pedal to the metal, took me off the board, and then after that was said and done, then they're like, "Tell me about your narrative. Now tell me about it." Like it's not that they don't care. Maybe they don't care right now, like because if it's a competitive tournament and someone's chasing that dream, that's their focus, and you got to respect.
They're focused. Yep. They're thinking about deployment, thinking about strategies, They're thinking about dice rolls.
Yep. So never take it as if they don't care. It's just like they have a goal right now. You got to respect that. Help them achieve their goal because you're achieving your goal just by being on the table. If narrative is your goal, but like I said, you may be competitive too, so you both may need to go after that. But yeah, you can. It can always wait till the end. It doesn't have to be up front. Like I do like your idea of just naming your characters, and then if someone's interested, because that's a good like kind of litmus test. Like it also kind of give you an idea of maybe what that person's after right now at the table. So you kind of like have a little extra, social cue. Like okay, let's play a game, or like we just want to have a few laps. Okay, that's fun. Let's do that. I think sorry, one more thing. The worst thing you can do, and this was a mental trap I actually fell into for a little bit, is I had my entire narrative fleshed out, but I kept it in my head too much. So make sure you are writing it down somewhere too. Whether you're sharing it at events or not, make sure you're putting it somewhere. Don't just leave it in your head because then no one knows about it.
I use my iPhone. In the notes section, and I just like write ideas. I'll name my characters, so every time that I write up an army list, I can always bring back the character. I've got a whole bunch of battle mages, right? So anyone who knows the cities of Sigmar, the little old battle mage can be chosen from 8 of the different mortal realms. I have a wizard name for each of the different ones. So if the battle mage is from Gairan, it has a name. But if it's from Hish, it's a completely different wizard. So whether I go out and some people may not be in a position to buy 8 different battle mages, but and they might be using one. But that's just a way that I can bring that to the table. And I use that note section. And if I have an idea, I can write it down. I might come back to it and explore it further. It might actually get me really curious to go onto Google and go, right. And one of the challenges I'm currently having right now is my next army is the Sons of Behemat. I want a Gargan army. And I know that I want my Gargant army to interact with my free city.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know the lore yet of the Suns. Like, I don't know what this battle tome is going to bring. And I'm trying to find my place in the mortal realms, but I'm trying to explore and look at all these different things, and I'm formulating ideas. And you're right, I'm documenting it. So the moment that battle tome comes live, I know how to bring it to life. I know the different parts that I want to bring it to, because there's a piece of story that I just absolutely love. And I've now found a way, more than just having a Johan kind of running kind of from a Gargant. I know how to bring it to life.
Yeah, and there'll be some hook in that battle tome that you can find. I'm sure, even if it could even be something as simple as, oh, he had been sleeping there for thousands of years and just woke up, or hundreds of years and just woke up out of his drunken stupor, and they said, hey, you're fighting with us now. Like, it could be that loose, and you can let it develop later too. So yeah, but battle tomes are a great place to find narrative hooks for sure.
I might just call out one of the comments here from Itis, because I think it's a really good comment here. Actually, he's going to say, he obviously, this person is very impressed with what we're talking about here. But the reason I'm pulling that out was they've mentioned that in their region, nobody seems to care when it comes to narrative. So one, they're finding this discussion really refreshing, but it's an interesting part, right? Because what we're not talking about here is narrative gaming. Because that in itself is a whole different challenge. Is that, traditionally in a narrative, you've got to have a story, you've got to have battle plans that people aren't usually flexible moving away from the General's Handbook or the core scenarios. Often there are no points, which means that some people, depending on the community you're playing in, may not like the idea of playing with less points than their opponent. And that causes friction, especially if you don't know the person. It's a wonderful way to play, don't get me wrong. But if your community is very matched play, competitive, points per General's Handbook, I can see there might be some challenges and struggles to develop a narrative. But I hope what you're hearing here is that they're not mutually exclusive. You can build a narrative army. And that can be as simple as in my, I took a bit of a page from Ben Johnson where I've been trying to think about how do I bring Kharadron overlords into my Tempest die, but still make it cities of Sigmar. So I converted 2 steam tanks to be flying steam tanks using half of a gun hauler part. So I used the balloon, I used the wings, I used a whole bunch of parts from the kit, but I steam tanked it in such a way that it feels cities of Sigmar, but is still KO. And when I put it on the table, again, people see those models and go, wait a second, that's not a stock model. What's the story? That's really cool. People acknowledge it. They like it. They ask questions. And I find that's how I've been able to build a narrative and get people interested. And now more and more people are talking about kit bashing, converting, and bringing their story to the table. I don't know what you found, Chuck, or any thoughts that you have on that particular comment.
Actually, I do have thoughts and maybe some advice on how to start introducing narrative as a concept to your region that seems to be competitive focused. Get to a table and ask somebody like, hey, what model do you like best? They're like, oh, well, I like this one. This is my character. And ask them like, well, do you ever think about naming it? And maybe they'll like, oh, maybe. And then that could be a way that they start developing their narrative as you're developing yours. And if they're just like, oh, no, I don't really care, I just like playing. Oh, okay. I'm here to assassinate that model. Sure, here's the General's Handbook. Here's what it says we need to do to win. For me, winning in this game is killing that guy. And if you have a single foot hero, and all of a sudden 2,000 points of your enemies running right at one single foot hero, it's gonna switch your brain and go like, what the heck's going on? and then you can kind of start, in a way, forcing a narrative into it. Like, that person's going to get what they want, which is to have a game where they might win. It might not be the most competitive game, but it's going to take them aback, and they'll at least start thinking about it. Or if you have someone that maybe is competitive focused, and you have a character, maybe you have your Teyrathi on the table, and someone kills it, and one of the unit kills it, and they're like, say they get all happy, like, I took out your named character. Take that. It's like, well, who took it out? Oh, well, this unit. Well, that unit's nobody. I'm injured and I left. Like, till that unit has a name, that's nobody. That's barely a trifle for my great character. And then they may come back and be like, okay, well, this is this unit. Even if it's as simple as like they're Teyrathi's killers. Okay, well, that's starting a narrative. So
yeah,
you can help introduce the concepts to everybody and show them that it can all be done together.
There are so many different ways to do this. Like when I think about building a personal narrative, I've got people in my community, and I'll come to Sean Blake in a minute. He's made a really good comment in the chat. There are people that are really simple, and I love this idea from a gentleman in my community called Dan Brewer. He was on my Skaven show. He's absolutely a gun when it comes to Skaven. But something he started doing about 2 years ago is that after every battle, he would name one of his clan rats us, his opponent. And he would get like a little white texter, or he would write under the base Michael, Mary, Bill, Anthony, like whatever your name was. And obviously he's got like 140 clan rats, and he's got Giselle Warfire teams, and like it was fun to be a part of his personal narrative. I'm booking a show right now with a gentleman called Dan. You might know him from the Honest Wargamer, Aussie Dan, or Dan Unsupervised. Yep. Something he did at a tournament 3 years ago that I'll never forget is he bought these little custom objective markers. He made them, I think it was partly resin, but he made these objective markers and he gave it to his opponent at the start of the game as a gift. And he basically, win, lose, or draw, he was going to put them in the Book of Grudges, being a dispossessed player. And hopefully he wanted to reclaim that objective marker off them if and when they got to play again, which I thought was really awesome. But then I've got people in my community like Deke Johnston, who's an absolute lore master when it comes to death. And he's just absolutely written it down. And it kind of comes to what Sean said is, he finds that writing a narrative has been an awesome tool, and including it into your army list, or on your display board, having a little small booklet or some pictures, or simply what I did on my CanCon display board was I named my city Nolthoff, which is essentially New Althoff. And by having the name, they're like, oh, that's not Hallowheart. That's not Tempest Eye. What's New Nolthoff? Boom. There's my opportunity to explain my story and share a little bit, and not just kind of rocking up to the gaming table and just verbally assaulting them with backstory till the cows come home.
Actually, that's a really interesting concept. I always set it next to my display board, but I have a journal. It's Teyrathi's journal. So every once in a while I'll put little entries into it, and you can see that there's times where she's getting a little unhinged. Maybe it's I'm having a bad losing streak right now at the tables, and that's usually when you'll see a lot more blood for the blood god sprinkled in instead of just normal handwriting. and even to the point where it's like I took this book and I put it in my back pocket while working out, while going out to job sites, just to make it look worn and use. I think it's been around for a while, and even something simple as I took some pages, I just ripped some pages out. Why were those pages ripped out? That's something I can explore later if I feel like it. I made my own narrative book.
What was on the pages? You could scribble stuff out. That's really cool. And then there's one person that kind of comes to mind. I want to give a shout out here. It's a gentleman by the name of Andrew Bigwood, who's a competitive wargamer. I think he did one of the best from a Cities of Sigmar point of view at CanCon. But what he did, and I love it, is he went to someone who makes custom decals, and he made his own logo. And he got them custom decaled so that all of his warriors in his Anvil Guard essentially have his logo. And it didn't actually cost him that much money, but having his art piece and kind of tied all through the army, naming characters, that was just another way that he could bring it to life. And there are just so many different ways, whether it's through story. Something that I did at a tournament, Sydney Slaughter 2017, was I wrote a battle report at the end of the tournament through the eyes of my general. And I just put it on a little document and I posted it on the Facebook page at the end. Some people read it, some people didn't. It didn't matter. I've got a document now from 3 years ago from that tournament through the eyes of my general, and I think that's really neat.
Oh, yeah. It's not just about the lead up, about the wrap up, too. That is an excellent point. The other interesting thing you can do, too, is as your army narrative expands, let it bleed over into other armies too. I think you're obviously doing this yourself, but I have a Ideneth army, and I also have a Slaanesh army, and both those leaders, they're the leaders of those armies. The whole narrative of those armies are much more simplistic, but they each have a hero that ties because they're in opposition of Teyrathi, and one being the Ideneth leader doesn't realize that she's in opposition. She just has found these shards of Cain and just, it's power. This is neat. So she doesn't know that Terathi has like the hit out on her, whereas the Slaanesh leader does, because Slaanesh, and she's also taking the shards of Cain, but she wants to resurrect Cain for her own Slaaneshi purposes. It can bleed out to even the point where my friend Neil, from the Ren 4 Club, he's part of my part of the podcast crew for Strength Hammer podcast, but he just did a Caradron Overlord entire fleet-based army, and he was naming all the ships, kind of like a World War II, like a little, there's a pinup art, and then he'd name them. He named the gun hauler like Terathi's Downfall, and put like a blonde pinup girl on it. So it's like now all of a sudden, like to him, that alone has made a connection to my army, which automatically gives him a whole plethora of things he could pull from, because he can go through my entire backstory and say, where did this happen? And yeah, it doesn't hurt me at all.
Yeah, that's really neat. That's really neat. It's funny you mentioned tying in armies, because that's something that I've done probably now for 4 armies. So again, people know that I'm a Cities of Sigmar Empire player back in the day. And when I built my Legion of Night, I went and tried to make it a little bit Cities of Sigmar or Empire. The way I did it, one example, was that I had a big block of 40 skeletons, and they've all got shields. And what I did was in every skeleton had one of 8 shield schemes from the Empire. So I had Altdorf, I had I had Middenheim, I had Sterling, I had Tabuklan, I had all the different shield colors. When I built my Terrorgeists and my Flesh Eater Courts, I had gotten the Griffin's chest plate, and I put it, so basically it was an armored around the Terrorgeist. Nice. All of my ghouls have little parts, like these. You see these little hats that the Empire would wear. I could actually put them on, and I've got like a musician and a standard bearer, and I put like some knight parts on my flayers. And then my grots, some things that I did was I put some cities parts on the grots. There used to be another hiding little free guild person that was off the old Gargant kit. I think it was a 6th edition Gargant kit, and I've got that hiding with my troll hag. I've got Johan running with in front of my colossal squig, and there are other parts that I'm trying to like bring all of my armies into this one narrative. So it's all of a sudden, all my army could probably be from Akshi, working with or in this world, and I'm kind of like self-contained little bubble.
Mm-hmm. And it's really fun to do that, because like as you said, like you had tons and tons of cities bits.
So much fun.
Yeah, like I said, if you actually I did send you some pictures of those other characters, but my entire Slaanesh army has Cain throughout it. Here you can see the family portraits on the right of almost every Terathi I've created. There's 2 more, which you probably have pictures of, but the center one is right now my favorite. It's the Bride of Cain. I took it to the Holy Havoc event. It'll be my Holy Wars whenever I get to Holy Wars leader as well. So I wanted it to be like the peak level of Terathi at her height of power.
I love it.
The 2 on the left are actually those are the ones I painted for Roger for ETC that are members of the Terathian cult. Essentially, I still told him they're on loan. He doesn't have to give them back, but they're always going to be members of the Terathian cult, despite the fact that they're part of his army. And actually, I didn't send you pictures of the back, but if you look on the back, that's where I have the Terathian rune. So every time he plays with them, he'll know that they're part of Terathi's army.
Well, it's actually, you just reminded me something that I wasn't even thinking about talking about, was that when I played at the Adepticons double, my partner was Martin Orlando. Mm-hmm. And Martin Orlando, one thing that we did off the back of our just ourselves, it wasn't anything formal, was I said to Martin, or we kind of agreed, is like, we will paint each other a hero and we'll run it in our list. So Martin Orlando had painted me a Loon Boss on foot, and I had painted him a Lord Ordinator. And I still have that model to this day, and it's a part of my story. So for things like doubles and teams events, if you have, in the past, I've done like Secret Santas with my local community. This could be another way to, I would love, Chuck, that you to bring something like, the cult of Terathi in my army somehow. Maybe
I
it's
think we should do that. I think you and I should do that.
like if I'm open to the story and you're open to the story, and you mention that you're a new Hallowheart, then did our armies interact? What did we just find out? And we could bring that to life in Soulbound RPG. We could bring that to life in like a little painting competition. We could just write stories and talk about it in a private chat. It doesn't have to be like larger than life.
Right.
But we're just telling a story, and this is what I'm loving about it. You can go as far or as little as you want. Ken has called his one of his beast lords Mr. Shanky. I ran an event 2 years ago, my first Sydney GT. I ran an event, and there was, I think it was Hayden or it was Sam Morgan, ran Daughters of Cain, and he named all of his hag queens the names of like female gangster rappers, like Cardi B or whatever. I'm not a gangster rap person, but like it was just like that was just really fun. And his opponents had a ball, obviously looking at this army list. And if they're gangster rap, they enjoy rap, they can obviously build rapport straight away. If nothing more, it's just a good laugh.
See, that's a really interesting thing. Like, one, I would love to do that. You and I exchange of models. I know we've been trying to send each other care packages for a while. And I'll actually help you try and hunt down some White Lion chariots for this as well. But I want to paint you a model to put somewhere in your army, whether it counts as an assassin or whatever. I think that would be a fun thing to do. Because now you got me thinking about that, because I haven't really done that. And one of my best friends in the world, Matt Hayward, we have been partners at Holy Havoc, and as well as one of the Ren 4s, where his Caradron, where we're with my Daughters of Cain. I don't have any reference to that actually in the army. I have it in the lore. I need to get with him, and him and I need to do an exchange. Need to make it happen, because that's a great idea to help grow it.
That was what Martin Orlando had painted me. So I think, and anyone seen who Martin Orlando's painting, they'll know that he loves these bricks, this brick kind of style on the base. So it was just really, really cool. It's a nice gift, and it's obviously appreciative. But I've got a couple of other pictures I'd love to show of your army.
Yeah.
Just easier if I press that button.
So these are actually some of my latest stuff. On the left is blatantly still this idea. Full credit to Alex Gonzalez at Adepticon TO. He was doing a Warcry warband of armored witch elves. He posted just one picture, and it was using a lot of Drukari bits from 40K. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is amazing. I said, how can I make this come to life? So I was like, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to just do like a Warcry warband like he did. I'm like, I need a whole unit of 30. These are Teyrathi's elite bodyguard. So anytime I feel Teyrathi, they're going to be on the table with her. And they're all shield, they're armored. I essentially found a way to make plastic witch elves more expensive by doing this. Yeah. I don't want to know how much money's in there, but because I doubled the price on steam tanks, right? My 2 gun haulers is a full kit of a gun hauler plus a full kit of steam tanks. So it's actually, I think it's like double and a half. But you don't care, right? Like when you spend the money, you don't care. I don't look at my kits and go, oh, I've just wasted half of my my Endrin rigger. Something that I've done recently is I've kit bashed the halflings from Blood Bowl with Endrin riggers, because again, an Empire player, I don't have dwarves, I have halflings. They're from the Mut, and I wanted that halfling experience back in my cities, so I was able to kit bash the both. And I'm not looking at my stuff going, well, I've still got all these basically these dwarves, because I've used the full body of the halfling, but I've just converted and kit bashed with weapons and the balloon. But money well spent. Oh yeah, 100%. And actually, even with that elite bodyguard, I took Martin Orlando gave me the idea. It's like your champion, your musician, your banner bearer, they should be amazing characters of their own. So actually, all 3 of them are each individual character models. So I think one is the female, the Magus from 40K, where she has the staff and she's walking forward. One is a succubus, and one is an old. It's actually the only metal model in that unit, but it's the old Lilith Hexbark. Probably pronouncing that wrong, but from 40K, she's the main witch elf. But so I have 3 models in there that are at least $30 a piece. And that's before everything else. But they're the heroes. Like,
Yeah.
You look at any other stock standard Daughters of Cain army, you'd be like, every single one of these characters could probably be a hag queen in that army. That's what I was going for with it.
And then you've obviously got this awesome. I'll let you explain this, but I love this.
This was really just, I always wanted to do it. I'd seen many people do this concept, whether it's in the US or in the UK. And it's just like, I need to do my take on it. And my favorite sculpt from GW, even when I was a high elf player, it's always been that sorceress kit, which you've seen it now like 2 or 3 times in these pictures. So anytime, like, I need to go buy one right now, but I always buy one and just set it on my shelf. I'll always find something to convert it into. So I just wanted to create a new character. So she doesn't have a name yet, but she's going to be probably the hag queen that is the main hag queen focus on the lore for the next event I go to. So
love it.
She's still in development, but yeah, I wanted to make it, so I made it. I can make her story later.
And that's okay as well. You can build something and then find a story, and maybe the story happens on the table where they do a champion feat. They were able to kind of avoid adversary, or something happens. It's like, right, well, now you've earned your name, and that's something that I've seen other people as well. Is they get their characters to earn their name through a feat.
Mm-hmm. So these next two are letting myself go off the rails. So the one on the left, I call that Terathi Unleashed. I just wanted to take. I had leftover bits from the 40k Ynnari kit, extra Slaanesh stuff, and I had an extra cauldron. Yeah, I have so many cauldrons that I have extra cauldrons. Like it's like they're up on blocks sitting in the shed till I get to them. I just wanted to create something that you looked at and said, this character does not like Slaanesh whatsoever. So that was the core concept. I wanted to be like there was a long time ago they released Star Wars action figures I think they're called Unleashed, or maybe something else. But essentially it was like Luke Skywalker, but it wasn't just Luke Skywalker holding a lightsaber. It was him like full on power swinging, like lightsabers blurred, like just in like the heat of the moment. And I wanted that to get that feel here of something just like extreme hatred of Slaanesh. So,
and I love, you've got the head of a keeper of secrets. It looks like you're sitting in the pool of the cauldron blood. I can see you've pulled parts from a 40k. I don't know what the model is, but it's kind of like it's kind of like a prime, but it's like the 40k prime, and it's got these amazing swirls that you've kind of pulled from.
Yeah, and I wanted to be very much that she's pulling blood and letting it mix with the maybe the chaotic energy. Maybe this isn't the smartest idea, but this is just, I need to kill everything. I need to kill everything right now. Let's go Super Saiyan however high we can get and worry about the consequences of that later.
So it's like, and then the story unfolds is what happens if there's too much chaotic energy has been drawn upon. Do we go into more of the cult of Slaanesh than we do the cult of Terathi?
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I have not played this model on the field yet, and I'm not sure when I will, because this could be also representative of, this could be like Terathi's downfall. This could be the moment that she goes too far in her pursuit and fails or succeeds. We'll see. But.
Well, I mean, in the old Warhammer Fantasy battles, and I could see this happening, is you did have the old cult of Slaanesh, which was the Daughters of Cain, essentially gone too far, and it was like a bit of a hybrid Slaanesh / daughters. So who knows what's on the path in the future? And if nothing more, that might be something that you could bring to a narrative event. If you spoke to the TO or the other roles that kind of open, say, well, what does a keeper of secrets within the Daughters of Cain look like? Because you've swung too far, and now you've got the blessings of Slaanesh rather than the blessings of Cain. And that just opens up a whole new world now.
And then looking at the picture on the right, I'm glad you put these pictures next to each other, because they're like the perfect dichotomy. Because obviously the one on the right is Terathi, like at her most controlled, her most pristine. Like she understands her power and what she can do with it. Obviously it's another 40k kit, because that's the other thing too. Don't be afraid with the Mortal Realms the way they are. Like Vince Venturella did it amazingly with his Cities of Sigmar army. Look at 40k models, because chances are you can bring them into Age of Sigmar for 40k into Age of Sigmar pretty easily. So this is the Saint Celestine model. I just scraped off as much iconography as I felt comfortable doing. Put the head on, gave it a weapon swap in the left hand, because I always give Terathi a scythe if I can. That's just been what she's wielded ever since the first model I built, and just went from there. Just standard Slaughter Queen on the table, but it's just she rises above even her honor guard, so she'll always be seen on the table. Some people want to be like modeling for advantage. It's like, okay, well, that model doesn't have shooting attacks, but you can see me. Sure, go for it. You can shoot me.
You gain as much as you lose. It's like, cool.
Yeah.
Now I can't be hidden. It's you're going to be popping me a little bit easier. But again, like I always had this conversation with a lot of people, especially Cities of Sigmar has created both a wonderful opportunity, but also a lot of a curse, because people are like, I want my city to be more elf. How do I turn a pistolier into an elf? And it's for me, people are like, well, can I use, I don't know, my old high elf reavers and convert them with pistols? And my answer is always yes, because the intention was to create a theme, not I'm trying to avoid spending money, and I'm trying to look for the cheapest way to use my models in 5 different armies. I'm not trying to use a high elf dragon as a magma dragon that I didn't want to buy from 412. It's you've got a theme, and you're trying to carry that theme through the entire army. And if you put effort and love into it, you can almost 99.9% of times. I've been talking to Clint Mallet. I mentioned him at CanCon, and I want to run some Drakespawn Knights, but I don't want to run Drakespawn. I don't want it looks really weird in my army. So I'm converting with the Black Ark Corsairs, and I'm using like my Demigryph Knights, along with some of the horses from the Celestial Harakanum, to make more traditional knights, but with that dragon kind of feel, with the cloaks of the Black Ark Corsairs.
Oh, nice.
So again, it's just like it's a way for me to reimagine. It's costing me more money to do it, but it's a way that I can create that theme and that narrative and tell a story, as opposed to just putting a bunch of models on the table that might not look completely synergistic.
Right. Actually, okay, so these two pictures are a couple of Terathi's lieutenants. So the one on the left is what I mentioned earlier, the first male Slaughter Queen, Carlebron, which is really just a combination of Halibron, the old Slaughter Queen from the world that was, and then the first couple letters are CHAR, so Charles, so Carlebron. So it's a little cheeky way to put myself kind of on the tabletop again. Like I said, I explored his narrative. It was a fun little one-off story. It's called Terathi's Gamble, if you do look it up on my blog. And then actually the one on the right, she doesn't have a true name. She just has a title called The Wingless One. And what this was, I was so taken by my time at Realms at War, and I knew I couldn't go the year after, saving funds and all that. But I wanted to participate even in my own way. So when the pack came out, I took it. Not that I was going to compete in any way, but they do release the battle plans and how you're going to build your character. So I built a narrative around a single character, and then the rest of the story they involved. And I took a single Canary and took a knife to her, as you can see, because you would bring in different models, and you'd build custom units. So I pulled in a bunch of old high elf stuff. And essentially it was is the Terathian cult, like a small sect of it, was accidentally pulled into this battle that was going on, which was like the little civil war that was happening in the Realms at War story. And this particular Canary was shot down, and these random group of elves came to their rescue, and these group of elves had nowhere to go, so Terathi took them in. So that's kind of like how I just tied it all together. So, and she's just a hero in my army. I use her on occasion. She's fun. People, you look at that and go like, they'll either ask you, what is her deal? Or why did you ruin a perfectly good Canary?
Yeah. And I think you just really called out a wonderful idea that I actually might take you up on, that you didn't even know that was even an option. And that is, there are narrative events that happen throughout the year. So Warhammer Achievements happens in England at the same time as Blood and Glory. You've got Raw, you've got Nova, you guys run a narrative event. there was one in Australia that was meant to happen before COVID kind of hit. Actually, I think it was this weekend, funnily enough. I think it was actually literally this weekend. But there are all these other events. So like, even if you don't have this narrative community, you could almost participate online, which I think is actually a brilliant idea, because I would love to attend Nova. I got really jealous when I started looking at all the Nova stuff that Mitzi and Jimbo and Steve and Ming do. But I could always get onto that journey, and because of the community like Twitter, on Instagram, I could be building my alchemist. Or if the new story is about, I don't know, a Titan, which was the Australian version, everyone had to bring a Titan. I could still do it. They still contribute, even though I'm physically not there.
Yeah, even though I wasn't able to go to Realms at War, like there's a lot of support from that community when I was making the wingless one. They're just like, that's so cool, and you don't expect, and you sit there and you enjoy the event, which Realms of War does a great job with their social media whenever that event comes. So, it was fun having them share it, even though I wasn't at the event. So, yeah, feel free to jump in on stuff like that at any time. There's no reason not to.
So if I was to kind of like bring this home and, let's get some real factual, meaty stuff to talk about, because your army is wonderful. And, I hope by now people who have watched this are now getting inspired to claim their place in the mortal realms. This is really dangerous for me, by the way, because the minute I hang up with you, I'm going to quickly eat lunch, and Games Workshop's just opened. And I'm going in there with the intention to play Blood Bowl, but this is a really big risk. So I am super inspired, and I'm even actually now really curious about what the cult of Teyrathi might look like. And I'd love this idea with you around the assassin, or I love this idea. I love bringing it to life.
I want to do, like, how would you put a human into the Teyrathian cult? I would love to see that. Like,
and, the first thing I think of is, again, being very magic orientated, and again, you don't have many males in your army. I wonder if you have a, someone that you've kind of corrupted, almost like a battle mage, who can come over and it's almost like dabbling, or you've been seduced into the cult of Teyrathi, but they have a spell lore, they have something they can bring to the table, or maybe through their, I don't know, maybe this is something that I need to think about. But
well. I mean, the last I left off, Teyrathi was setting up cults of Cain through the Teyrathian cult inside Anvil Guard. So, I mean, a random human could wander in and they would be welcome. And we'll see if they're useful or not. I mean, we'll see if they're devout enough to join.
Maybe we're chasing.
We could be, but I have to warn you though. My friendly local game store opened up today too, so there is the danger whenever you get so far into this army that you keep buying witch elves. So I officially have 250 now.
We did play by. I do have to put this on a podcast. Chuck and I did fight at Adepticon. It was the battle of pop stars. I should have worn the shirt actually. It was Britney Spears versus Taylor Swift. I did beat you, which means Britney Spears is officially the better pop star than Taylor Swift. Don't at me, people. It is fact. I won the battle. Britney is better.
You're Britney. You're Britney, bitch.
I'm Britney, bitch. Leave Britney alone. So how do I bring it all to the table, dude? How do I bring this all to life? And, I'm hearing things like the stories that GW has put together. It's about yourself writing down notes and exploring narratives and asking yourself questions. I'm hearing stuff about tabletops. I love the idea of exploring the 40K world. One thing that I'm really thinking about right now is the stuff that was previewed at the LVO seminar, such as that AdMech mechanical horses. Mm-hmm. That's perfect for Greywater fastness. Yeah. It's like, what does Pistoles look like from Greywater? Boom, I've got mechanical horses.
Yep.
Done.
Yep, they did it for you.
Done. So how else can I bring it to life? How can I bring my ideas that are living in my head onto the table?
I mean, obviously converting, like you said, maybe you don't have to convert. Maybe we'll get lucky and GW releases exactly what you need. But don't be afraid to do a head swap on models that, even just as a simple start, that you're like, I don't know if this will work. I can't tell you how many different models I've ruined. It happens. It's a learning process. So whether you're converting a single model or converting an entire unit, that is another quick and easy way to do it. But like I said, if you find a narrative that you really love, write it down, talk about it. Tell your friends, tell your buddies. It doesn't have to be something you shout to the world, but if you really love it, you're probably going to end up shouting it to the world, much like we're doing right now. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good way to embrace it and, let others play in that world too. You can't just keep it all to yourself. Like I said, I have Neil, who's made a direct reference to my army's leader in his army. And I think that's wonderful. If I was just like, oh, I don't want you to do that. It's like, no, go ahead, do it. It's not going to hurt me. It's only going to enhance both of our stories. So share your narrative. Let other people play in that narrative world with you. Right, like I said, I can't stress enough. Write it down as soon as you can, because it was kind of a nightmare just sifting through old army lists and all the lore pieces are written down. And where's that blog post at? What did I title it? To re-put everything back together.
And I think we've danced around this, and I've wanted to call it out, but we haven't said it explicitly. Is start an effing blog. Start a blog. That will encourage you to take photos. It'll encourage you to write your stories down. You'll be able to do what Chuck has done and go back in time and try to find the common thread, or try to find the challenges, look at how the army's evolved. And it allows you to share that story. And, all it is it telling... Ken's just pointed out, maybe I need to make my battle mage Brittany Ken, you're a beautiful human. Wow. All right, we got something there.
All right.
But by putting in a blog is like the cult of Teyrathi, you have got us all spellbound because you're writing up these blogs. You put it on Twitter like, hey, here's my new blog about my attendance at Adepticon, or here's my latest model, or here's my latest character, here's what I've done. And you can take photos and talk through the process of modeling, or sharing the stories as it progresses. So, and then you build a following of people that really enjoy, and you get to a point where someone's interacting with your community, like you're finding with the Karajan overlords, and then the story just keeps increasing, and I love it. I think the blog is something that I think that people in our community aren't doing enough of. We got plenty of podcasters. We have plenty of YouTubers and Twitchers. I think there's still a lot of open space for people setting up blogs, and they're basically free. Most places are offering them at almost no cost. It's not like you've got so much data you're going to put onto a website that you need hosting. It's dirt cheap.
Yeah, it's. I use Blogger, and eventually I did buy my own URL, but you don't need to. I didn't do it for years. Granted, I will admit I'm kind of falling into that trap. I'm doing more podcasting, so a lot of my recent blog posts have just been links to the podcast. But that aside, too, outside of blogging, a good way to organize it too is on a Google Drive.
Yeah.
So I have a Google Drive. It's called Teyrathi's Tale. Here's where I have her artwork. Here's where I have her lore pieces in order. Here's where I have every list she's been in, which is almost every list I've played for Daughters of Cain, what event it was. And then miscellaneous stuff. Like I do memes too. I like memes. I mean, shout out to Haywo. He's the meme lord. But just everything that's tied to the army, even the other armies that have a character that's tied to my army through like rivalries, there's a place for it in that folder, because that does help later whenever you want to do more with it. And put it up on your blog. But yes, I do love that. Go blog.
I take a lot of photos on my gaming. So I obviously I want to be in the moment. I don't want to interrupt my opponent, but I take a lot of photos, and it might revolve around one or two characters, especially those heroic moments. So, and like there's so much white space, but I think what I'm hearing is you can tell a story for yourself, write some notes, find a place in the mortal realms. Watch that video from Phil Kelly explaining in the Mortal Realms. Look at the different, whether it's an audio book, whether it's the novel, go look at things like Soulbound. There are just so many cool places that you can just try to pinpoint somewhere in the map. You may not know exactly, like me, I didn't know exactly what was happening in the Opal Isles, but it was enough white space for me to essentially be a sandbox to go, right, well, my perimeters are Tempest Eye to the south, Hallowheart to the north. I've got to one side, I've got the Flamescar Peninsula. I've got a sea to me on the right side. But then as Soulbound's kind of come out, there's a place called Brightspear, which is quite far away. Now I've got this mountain range. And I was like, cool. That mountain range could now be where my Gargants are from. And maybe a little bit far out near the Flamescar is where the Grots are. So all of a sudden, like things that I started 2 years ago are now evolving, and pieces kind of slowly start to connect. So just know that it's not like your narrative doesn't start from one day. It's just a constant evolution, and things that you do may not make sense to you today, but it will eventually the penny will drop.
Right. And just because you're going to a competitive event and maybe you're not doing a ton of narrative doesn't mean you can't record it on some level. And then when you do go to a narrative event, you can go to the extreme levels and truly play how your character would play. Like, for instance, shout out my good friend Matt Hayward again, who partnered with me at Holy Havoc. I got to play on the Cain table. And I made a deal with the opponents. Hey, I need to get to the top of this Cain of the Cain shrine and take pictures, because Terathi's whole goal for the entire event was to get up there and take some selfies. Problem was, my partner Matt, that was a great position to put his Caradron Overlord general on one of the boats so he could shoot. Hey, once again, go to my opponent. Hey, can you take him down? He's kind of in the way. Ran up there, like I threw Matt under the bus so hard, and I got some amazing pictures. It's great. I love it.
Speaking of terrain, there's another thing that's a really cool story, but it just reminded me. So in Australia, we have, I wouldn't call it a rule, but it's more like a gentleman's agreement that each player will bring a couple of pieces of terrain to contribute to the tables, so that the TO doesn't have to contribute 10 pieces of terrain. Imagine what that looks like at CanCon, where there's 240 players. Mm-hmm. That's 120 tables times that by 10, 11 pieces of terrain. That's a lot of terrain for Clint. So, and it reminded me of a gentleman in my community called Ben Spinetti, who you might know from the show. He's done Deep Kin with me in the past, but he developed 3 pieces of terrain, and they were all thematic to his army. So one was an Azurite ruin, but it was actually being lifted up by a wave. So it was like the tide was taking it, which was awesome. Yeah. He built like a bar. So he used half of a ship, one of the shipwrecks, and he made it as a bar. He had low 10 with the octopus in a bar. Incredible, right? But again, that's another way that you can bring your story to life. If I'm a Gloomspite Gits, let's bring some mushrooms. Let's think about, some I've seen simple things like the Loon Shrine. They've cut out the Loon Shrine eyes, put an LED so it glows. And I'm like, that's brilliant. Mm-hmm. That's such a simple, small thing you can do to create a little narrative burst.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful idea. I'm looking too. Like, I need to redo my entire Daughters of Cain display board. And yeah, I'd love to have a whole table themed to Daughters of Cain. I don't have that yet, but that's a fun thing to work on. It's working on the army without working on the army.
So here's something that Deke did for me. So last year, Deke had approached me and for my event, my City GT event, and Deke said, I'd like to contribute 1 table's worth of terrain for you. So as a TO, I'm like, brilliant. That's one less thing I need to do. But what he had done is he had contributed a table that was basically like Carstinia, basically a very Soul Blight orientated table. And he had a very thematic table. He provided the battle mat, he provided the terrain. So he was able to bring his story to life and contribute a table. And for me, it was brilliant. It took pressure off me. But it also inspired him to create his own terrain as well, that he's going to be able to take advantage of when he's playing his games at home. So it was like 2 birds, 1 stone, and he's brought his world to life. He had spooky wildwood trees. He had this amazing kind of tower. It was just, had like this, like a tomb, essentially. It was just brilliant.
So what you just gave me is an idea to help push the Terathi's story at events even more so. Because that's a brilliant idea. Do a whole Terathi themed Daughters of Cain table to offer to events to use as an entire table. That's great.
And you know what this is also proof, Chuck? This is also proof? Is that talking to each other just fleshes out stories and ideas, and we walk away with more stuff to do because we're fueling each other's hobby. And this is why you don't want to keep it in yourself. You want to be sharing it and finding like-minded individuals. And there are communities, there's an awesome group called things like AOS 28, which is all about this grim, dark Age of Sigmar. But there's just pockets of these communities. So don't keep it into yourself, share it, and you'll be surprised how many people like some form of narrative. It might not be narrative gaming, but it'll be some form of narrative in their army.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, share it. Don't keep it in.
Is there any other tools that you could think of that might help me bring it to life? So we've talked blogs, we've talked converting and kit bashing, we've talked about story writing, and we've talked about like.
I think the biggest one is what you just brought up. The best tool is each other, to help each other. I mean, at the end of the day, no matter what stories I write for Terathi, they don't come to life unless I'm playing somebody on the table. So, yeah, I think we've kind of hit everything I can think of.
No, so I'm almost like reinforcing some other points. Name your characters, especially like if you're submitting a list, because most tournaments will ask you to bring a list at least on the day. In Australia, I know it is it's required that you submit it in advance. So like name some players and. So name some characters. And if you're struggling with names, people like Jamie the Jester have created little name generators that can help you generate names. I like that dramatic kind of empire names. It's a very German Roman Empire kind of feel. So I use Dungeons and Dragons name generators as well to kind of find some inspiration. So there are name generators. There are a whole bunch of things you guys can pull from. We've talked about, the little nameplates. We've talked about display boards. We've talked about, your little art logos that you're able to incorporate on your army lists and your blogs. There should be something here to help you get started, to find your place in the mortal realms, to expand your story, and then tell your story.
Yeah, and definitely if you do have like a story that you've been working on or a narrative, I'll check back on these comments, but like put it in these comments of the show, because I love reading narratives. I love reading stories. I like knowing what people got going on. So yeah, if you have anything that you are working on, maybe you haven't put it out there too much, put it out there now.
Big shout out as well to Ken. He's pulled out a really great comment as well. And this is a simple one we've kind of overlooked, dude. And it's like basing models to help carry the theme.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Thing. Yeah.
It's so simple. It's like, okay, cool. My army's from Akshi. Cool. What does a base look like in Akshi? Does it have to be lava based, or could it be more of a plains based? If I'm in the Plainscarf Peninsula, maybe it's more deserty, or maybe it's more of that Martian-esque kind of like red stone. Is there bits that I could use?
Yeah, grass tufts, or even like I have not a lot, but I have blood for the blood god on my bases on certain locations, like where it looked like blood would drip off of a weapon because blood.
So all of Deke's armies, for example, come from Shaish. So he goes and buys the army painter purple flowers. They're the only flowers he uses. They're all purple because obviously Shaish is purple, and he keeps that through his basing, and it looks brilliant. It looks really complementary to the reds and the blacks that he would use in a Legions of Nagash army. So again, a simple way to carry that kind of theme across.
Yeah, like I said, like back to Martin Orlando and his bricks.
Yeah,
I mean, you know that is a city of Sigmar army because it's infrastructure.
Yeah, I've seen people like cut out their bases so like they can drill a little bit of a hole, or they use like milliput to build it up, and then use like a little bit of resin to kind of make like Nurgle,
Nurgle rot pools,
and things like that. Like there's just so much. And basing, Ken, you've just nailed it. That's perfect. Thank you for pointing that out. Is there any last advice you'd want to give Chuck around this particular topic about finding a personal narrative, building a personal narrative, and then kind of like sharing it?
Don't be afraid to do it. Just do it. Just try it and do it. Let it happen organically. Don't force it, and make sure it's something that you enjoy. If you don't enjoy it, stop doing it. Find something else. And you don't have to tie it to a single army. Like I said, I'm very focused on one army because I found that army to be my passion. But like yourself, you can have it tied to many armies. You can use it to connect different armies that would never work together for games at home with your friends or at your club, or even to a major narrative event that will let you mix like that. So just do it, and don't ever think that just because you're a narrative player that you can't be competitive. And if you're a competitive player, don't think that you can't also do a narrative inside of your story, because the rules of these armies play so well into competitive anymore.
My last comment, and there have been comments about people trying to find and build that community. The easiest way that I've found building a community of like-minded individuals, especially on the gaming table, is if you are at your local store, not obviously a tournament, but if we're at a local store together, and Chuck and I, or insert random person here, we're going to play a game, and I want to explore a narrative. The best and easy way to do it is show interest in your opponent's narrative. And every battle tome has a 1 to 2 battle plans, which is narratively orientated. So you might say to your opponent, I want to play the Bad Moon scenario in the Gitz handbook that, I'm playing a Gitz army. So not trying to force them into my scenario, but maybe showing them interest, and then, they kind of get to explore their narrative or their battle plan that they wouldn't normally get to play. And then they go, oh, that's a good experience. And you might still wrap it with match play points, and, you might try to find still a bit of fairness, but once they've had a good experience, they're more likely to keep progressing into some weird and wonderful places that, whatever.
Yeah, no, that is great. Because, those battle tomes, battle plans in the battle tomes are great ways to show off your army and play in a very narrative fashion pretty quickly and pretty easily. So, don't discount those. They're great.
I know we've had a couple of quick shout outs. So first off, if you haven't followed Chuck, you're a crazy person, go onto Twitter and go follow him. In the video description, there is his stuff. Go do that. Go check out his blog. The blog is incredible. There's so many wonderful resources. You are on a podcast. You are doing your Strength Hammer podcast. Any shout outs, anything you want to tell the people on the interwebs?
Actually, I want to congratulate one of my good friends, Sean. He's Brush for Hire on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. He just hit 1,000 subs on Twitch today, and he does fantastic. He's made commission painting his life. He took that step finally, and he's a fantastic painter. He painted my Ideneth army. He's actually painting my Blood Bowl team right now. But he streams Monday through Friday, I think 8 to 4, and he has fun with it. If you tune into his at any given time, he'll have a different hat on. He may be in a banana suit. He just has fun painting and just chatting and playing music. Like, he's very, very different type of streamer or art streamer for miniature wargaming that I've seen anywhere else. So go give him a follow if you could.
Oh, you're very complimentary. And go check out Chuck. I can't stress enough. Go check out Chuck. Go check out his podcast. Go check out his blog. Go follow him. He is a bundle of joy, and you get to see his Strength Hammer workouts as well, which is inspirational, as well as we're all in isolation and maybe eating a little bit more than we should, or not moving as much as we should. He's been keeping me sane, but also in check, because I don't see his workouts.
Also, you can follow me. I am on Instagram as well, same as my Twitter handle, which is already linked below. If you want to see more as things happen throughout the day, because Instagram does a better job with stories and all that. So if you want to see the smaller moments of shenanigans that happen throughout my day, follow me there.
Chuck, this has been an absolute pleasure. I'm really sad we didn't get to play again or meet again at Midwest Meltdown. Unfortunately, I am locked in my country, but I know our time will come again soon, and this was a nice way to at least talk. I'm now inspired to explore this idea with you about a model share. I think, I would love to see, nothing would please me more than people who watch this share their ideas with us on Twitter, get that blog started. I'd love to hear how people are exploring the mortal realms, because that means I learn more about the mortal realms through your exploration. And I think that is just a wonderful gift that you can give the community.
Mm-hmm. Yep, fantastic. Thank you very much for having me on, by the way. It's been
no pleasure. And if you've enjoyed this, guys, again, thank you to all the Patreons who make this possible. Again, they're all kind of linked down below. They are absolute rock stars. If you want to talk Age of Sigmar, I've got a Discord channel that is going off like a frog in a sock. Good for sharing hobby and having some good laughs. And finally, if you've enjoyed it, smash the like button, hit the subscribe, do that YouTube-y stuff. Don't forget that the best way to win a game is to score more objective points than your opponent. So without further ado, have a great rest of your day. Thanks for hanging out. Chuck, you're a legend.
Take care, all.
Thanks, y'all.